When you are looking for a job, obviously you're going to focus on like how much money am I going to be paid? That's a critical thing. But you also, I hope, are interested in the kind of benefits that you receive. And there's some standard ones like, 3 sessions of physio or some dental coverage and all that kind of stuff. More and more recently, though, employers are starting to think about and even offer voluntary benefits. Perigon Life is a platform, a tech platform that helps connect employers to those types of benefits. And we're going to have a conversation about what that actually means. Elaine Yedlin is the Chief Operating Officer at Perigon, and she's here to talk about voluntary benefits with us today. She's in Toronto. Hello there.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I hope everybody every once in a while pulls out that benefits booklet. It's not a physical thing anymore like it was back in the day. It's probably a PDF or it's on their website at work somewhere. They know about physio and dental, as I mentioned. What exactly are voluntary benefits? How does that fit into that whole question?
Yeah, so I mean, one, hopefully you're right, and everybody goes to sleep reading their benefits booklet. Right? Most people don't, but I think you're right. People are familiar with, I call it kind of those cash or everyday benefits, right? Like, if you have prescription drugs, that you have drug coverage, you have massage, and kind of it's that instant gratification of I had a cost, I'm going to get it reimbursed. And that's really where, when you think about employee benefits, where traditionally employers have really spent their time and their energy and their money, because that is the largest kind of cost driver in these plans. And that really is what initially gets people in the door, right? Because it affects them today and in the moment. But when we think about, an overall need standpoint, where is somebody's what are they actually lacking, or what could they use some help and resources on? It's probably around some of those more longer term liabilities or issues that could come up with them, right? So what happens if somebody gets sick and now they can't work? Where are those expenses going to get paid from? Or, unfortunately, somebody passes away. Well, what happens then? And so there is some coverage typically in traditional, I call them traditional, like what your employer offers you in your group benefit plans, right? There's typically some kind of life insurance, but that's not a forever type of product. If you ever left your employer or you retire, you can't take that coverage with you. So, one of the things that we thought about in the market when we've been looking at this for a while now is there really is this gap between what is it that an employer is offering their employees and what is it that people actually need. But those things that people might need are very different from one person from another. That's why we call them kind of voluntary and optional benefits, right? Because it gives somebody the ability to come in and now really create a package of products that really fits within their needs.
And how do those, we'll talk about the specifics in a second, but conceptually, is the employee paying to bolt on those additional benefits, or is the employer saying, listen, here's an extra $1,000 or $1,500, and you can choose from this little menu of things such that they're best customized to your circumstance?
In reality, it could go either way, right? There are employers today that offer those types of choice plans, and there's no reason why a voluntary benefit product can't now fit into what those other choices that they already have. Or it can be offered where it is completely as the employee, whatever they want to add on to their coverage, that they would just pay out of a payroll deduction through their pay.
Give us the laundry list of things that would be available in terms of voluntary benefits, and be sure you include pet insurance because I was quite surprised when I saw that on the list.
It's funny because I think if you ask most employers or HR people when you talk voluntary benefits, the first question is does that mean pet insurance?
Right.
Because it's our pets, right? Like, what do you mean I can't? I can cover them. But so we have life insurance, critical illness insurance, pet insurance, home and auto is going to be on the platform, home system and appliance warranty products, legal assistance insurance, identity theft coverage. We have coverage for virtual vet care that people can access. So that's more around just an easier access to services, right?
Mm.
Online pharmacy, small purchase financing are all things that we've kind of linked into the platform to, again, just to provide access to services that people otherwise don't really think about.
How do these things get priced? Are they a la carte or is it, a mix and match for a particular amount of money?
Yeah, so each product is priced based on its own merits, right? So when you think about things like life insurance, critical illness insurance, that pricing will be based on an individual's age, their gender, their smoking status at the time that they purchase it. Now, because these products are being set up under kind of their employer, even though the employee is the one paying for it, because it's getting set up under this group basis, they do get kind of this economy of a larger group of people that are buying, which does help to drive down rates versus somebody just going and looking to buy some individual life or critical illness insurance.
How do you help clients determine what they actually need? And I ask because there's a continuum here of like people, they're insuring everything. Like they don't buy a $50 tech device at Best Buy without getting the warranty protection plan. And I would argue they're over insuring, they're paying way too much. And people who have three children and no life insurance. How do you help people determine the balance of the cost benefit based on their both practical and
Yeah.
psychological risk profile?
Yeah, so that's interesting, and I think when we even looked at when you said before the laundry list of products that we have, when we set out to launch Paragon, we didn't think, well, we're going to have the home and auto and the pet and all of these. When we first looked to launch this, we said, what's the real need that we saw in the market, and we felt like the real need for people is around life insurance and critical illness, right? What happens if you pass away? What happens if you get sick and you can't work or you have these one-time kind of costs and need liquidity? And so we set those products up in a certain, I'll call it a special way, in that um, we try and drive engagement into those products first by offering people pre-approval for those products if they buy during an initial window. What does pre-approval mean? It means no medical, right? So you can come in, and as long as you are buying during that window that the employer gives you access to, you can get those products without any medical questions, because that really is the first place that somebody should look of where they're going to spend their money, right? And then after that, if they have other things that they want to look at, then they can look at the menu of other services that are there. We did a survey a little while ago, and it was interesting because it came back that 66%, so about two-thirds of employees were saying that they were looking for additional options in their benefit plans, and that their biggest cost or the biggest barrier for why they weren't buying other things were cost. So, it's interesting because then when you marry that with being able to offer them products at a competitive pricing because of that group buying power from their employer, they can now fit within this 15 to 30 to $50 per month budget that they said in our survey that they would be willing to spend on additional benefits, right?
One of the things that's very tough for consumers is getting the value equation right on the insurance that they purchase. And I think partly it's not super transparent. It's hard to get competitive quotes. There's a fairly wide range in terms of what's included, and therefore that's reflected in the premium. How do you talk about value when consumers, they don't really want, this is not a fun thing for them to engage in. They're not interested in ensuring that they get the best price. For
Yeah.
a lot of people, I'm not speaking universally, but for a lot of people, like, ugh, can think of nothing less interesting.
Yeah, and part of it is education, right? So unfortunately, when you think most, back in the years and years ago, there were dedicated insurance sales, and not that there's obviously still insurance brokers out there, but back in the day, they were more willing to sit down with anybody and have a conversation and really go through that needs analysis with them and make people understand the importance of having that protection, right? In today's day and age, most insurance agents, unfortunately, or everybody, they're looking for the whales, right? They don't want to sit down with everybody and have a conversation about kind of the smaller or more normative needs that people have. There's an interesting study that came out of the Canadian Cancer Society, I think in the last year or two, that said, on average, anyone in Canada that's diagnosed with cancer has about $33,000 of out-of-pocket costs.
Wow.
Most people don't know that because they think, well, universal health care, I'm not going to have
Yeah.
any costs, right? So it's that kind of education to let people know that these types of things exist and that they have the ability to protect themselves by spending a few dollars in the right way, right, with the right coverage. And the thing we wanted to make sure we did is that we pre-vetted the the suppliers that we have on our platform so that it's not only about, it's a balance of cost, but also of getting them best in class coverage, right? So making sure that we're limiting the ways that people could get declined or not get a claim paid out if they ever did have an instance of a claim.
Canadians are very familiar with the big, massive insurance companies that have been around for, 100 years. Paragon Life is a new name. What should we know about your firm?
We bring it to, as I said before, what we were trying to do is really bring in the best in class of providers, right? So we are agnostic to the insurance providers that are on our platform. It's really about bringing those best in class features to people to allow them to get the right coverage at the right time with reducing their risk of not getting coverage and giving them the ability to keep those coverages and port them when they leave their employer.
Really interesting stuff. Elaine, thank you for joining us to talk
Thank
about
you.
this.
Thank you very
Elaine
much.
Yedlin, Chief Operating Officer at Perigon Life. She was here to talk about this idea of voluntary benefits. So, as you think about that benefits booklet, physical or online, what else do you want that maybe isn't there? And is this a place that you're going to pay up to get that additional coverage?